Hey everyone, it's John here. I hope you're all doing well. Been having a good day so far over here. It's been a rainy, peaceful, chill day. Been cooking, doing a bit of housework, getting some shopping, had a workout, and now I'm just chilling out. Thought I'd end the rest of my night by making this video here. And this one is in part a response to the rant I had the other day about hating modern anime. And so I thought I would go through at least what I consider to be the best animes ever made. And this is my personal preferences. I know not all of them will be aligned with what other people think. In fact, just before I made this, I looked up, like top 10 anime videos on YouTube. And I was actually really shocked by most of the ones that I saw. Uh, a lot of the animes that I have here weren't even mentioned, which is just completely insane to me, really. But let's go into it, and I'll have a chat about it as well as I'm going into my favorites and why I just think that they're on a different level to the more mainstream sort of things, though. I can guarantee you there's some really mainstream animes in this collection, and I'll start off with Akira, an undisputed classic anime. I think there is very few people out there that would say that this is a bad film. It's brilliant on a visual level, the writing, the metaphysics that you get involved in and engaged in when you're watching the story and trying to unravel what it all means. Profoundly deep. The art still blows your mind today. And it sort of perfectly sums up of not only how I feel about most anime these days, but like most art these days. You're not seeing films like Akira very often. They're few and far between. And it's almost as if, every now and then you just get some piece of art that just blows everyone's mind and just gets out there and it works and is a success. But then after that, everything's just oversaturated. There's people just experimenting and trying to find like something that works instead of having this like true sort of artistic direction, and it's a lot of it's just overruled by this will sell and what production companies want, and a more sort of, I guess you could say, decentralized power over someone's ability to create like an original piece of art, especially like when funding gets so big for these projects. Because yeah, Akira was a massive film. It cost a lot of money to make, and a lot of hours were burned into putting this thing together. And even though there might be some slight tropes of anime in there, it's so early on, it's still original. And I mean, the closest I can sort of think of off the top of my head is that the protagonists are teenagers. But apart from that, I mean, it really goes and does its own thing. It is based off of a manga before it, but the film is brilliant and definitely stands up to it. The sort of entertainment value that I had to alongside, especially after the viewing, every time after I see it, I'm always thinking different things, and it's still one of those films that always in my mind in some ways because it's so relevant to today's world. It becomes increasingly more relevant, and the deeper themes behind it are things like why war happened, like hatred, nihilism, and this like need for release, this like need to control oneself and guide themselves to higher places, how people are almost consumed by this self-manifested fire that's going to take them all out, and they want that. It's very deep, gets into a lot of subconscious areas, and it's subtle. The artistic direction is really spot on, and it's one of those films as well where it's like, that's not an anime. It's like if someone asked me, do I like anime, I'd probably say no, but there are a lot of really good films and a lot of really good shows that just stand apart from just being something in a genre, and it's like, this is something else at that point. And Akira definitely checks all those boxes. Much the same as Ghost in the Shell, which was the first anime that I ever watched, or I guess that I probably, watched Dragon Ball Z when I was a kid. But this was the first one that I ever bought, and I went home, watched it. I had no idea what the fuck was going on, and it has all the usual accolades on the front of the Blu-ray here that was on the DVD back at the time as well, and just all the 5-star reviews, masterpiece. I was like, I've got to see this, but it's such an adult film. Mamura Oishi has got a very deep philosophy, but he's also like extremely educated. There's so many subtle references to small pieces of literature or allusions and paraphrases of other people's work and thinking. I feel that the more you mature, the more you learn and have a sort of database in the back of your mind to actually understand like a lot of the things that are being presented to you and make like your own greater interpretations. It definitely becomes so much better, and it's one of those films that evolves with you, I find anyway, as you progress through life. The different times that you're going in, and sort of the propheticness within Ghost in the Shell. It's a futuristic dystopian thriller based around essentially like a sort of FBI or like a CIA sort of agency, and the manga that it's based on is nothing too major to write home about. And like the Japanese version is called like Armored Riot Police, and all this sort of thing, just a bit more sort of wacky on the front end of it. When you really get into it, you see that this isn't your regular anime, this isn't your regular manga, this is almost like an ambient vision. That's the best way I could sort of explain it. It's very similar to Blade Runner, where the dialogue is sort of secondary after the visual presentation, which it just excels at. So Ghost in the Shell is an absolute classic of a film, though the sequel, Ghost in the Shell 2, is my favourite film of all time. I've watched that film so many times, and it's much the same again. The first time that I watched it, I had no idea what the fuck was going on. I felt like so much went over my head. There was something about the visual style, the sound in that film is so fucking good. The lighting, the contrast, every single shot in that film I could look at for hours. Just, it blows my mind how good that film looks and how good it sounds. And so just from that alone, I ended up watching it like quite a number of times. I've seen the dubs. I've seen the different um, publishing releases, like the Bandai one, the manga one. Seen on DVD, seen on Blu-ray, all that sort of thing. Um, just because I loved it so much. But then, reading lots of books, going to university for a while, and all that sort of thing. Still coming back to it. Then it started to dawn on me how this was actually a masterpiece. And it's a shame, really, but I'm glad it's the way it is, because it is like perfect to me in my eyes. That it is so hard to engage with, because there's so many portions of the script that's just a quote from someone else, or it's a slight paraphrasing, and then also Mamoru Oshii putting his own philosophical works in it, and especially within the visual presentation interlaced with all this. It's very profound. I really don't think I've seen a better film than Ghost in the Shell 2. And the fact that it was an anime didn't limit it in the slightest, and it wasn't just sort of hand painted stuff either. It's integrated with the CGI, which can age so badly and look so tacky. In Ghost in the Shell 2, it just looks fantastic. The voice acting's fantastic. The score is absolutely mind-blowing as well. Much like it is in this, Kenji Kawai is a fucking genius. And yeah, what more can I say? It is... Both of them are insanely good films that go into all sorts of ideas about God, about consciousness, about what is life. Do we have spirits? Do we have souls? Or are we just numbers in a machine? It goes into it with at the height of artistic grace. And it's a must watch for sure. The second one, it can be difficult to get engaged with, but honestly, it's worth your time. It's worth your investment. Also, Ghost in the Shell Standalone Complex. Brilliant series. Takes things a lot more light-hearted, even though it's still, very sophisticated. You get to know a bit more of the subtle details of relationships between the characters, new characters, and it's also just like this great episodic series where every episode there's something else going on in this sort of technocratic or like hyper industrialized, cyberized society that's going through all these different things. There's people that are basically being able to put their consciousness or their soul into any form of machine. And there's just so many great stories that you can make around that, and the show does it very well. It's not the same as the films, it's a different director, different team, and in my opinion it's not as good, but definitely it's still amazing. It's a fucking great series, and highly recommend that. Also, Ghost in the Shell Arise, I actually thought was pretty good. Ticked much of the boxes that I expect from like a good Ghost in the Shell product. And the new one from Netflix I think looks absolutely terrible. I don't think that I can stand to watch that one. It looks like it'll age terribly as well, but I guess that's just one series that's being bought over and will get ruined, just like everything does these days. Star Trek, Lord of the Rings, blah blah blah. It's just another part of the page where genuinely decent stuff just ends up either getting mimicked or bought over and spawned out for cash. And the saddest part is that it will sell well, whilst classics like Ghost in the Shell and Standalone Complex will slowly be buried. Now here's a great one. Paprika. I know the director's first name. Yeah, Satoshi Kon. He's a great director. He's made classics like Perfect Blue and all that sort of thing. And this is one of those animes that is just so beautiful, stunning. The music, not so much in a mind-blown way, but I was really hypnotized by this film. It's like way better than Inception. So if I had to explain it to someone, like, what is it about? It's basically like Inception, where there's been this technological breakthrough where people can read other people's dreams and implant dreams in people's minds, and they're controlling other people through it. And this, she's like a sort of CIA agent in Japan, you know what I mean, like in a Japanese sort of intelligence agency. And she's like developed her machine that can let her go into other people's dreams and like into the subconscious. And she has like this alter ego called Paprika. It's all basically just about like her investigation into trying to find out who's this sort of dream terrorist going into people's heads and planting this shit. But it's a real visual treat, audibly as well, fucking great. All the music on this was actually made on an Amiga 4000, so that's pretty cool. It goes to show how fucking amazing the Amigas actually are. I mean, they're so old, but imagine actually still being able to write like a complete fucking score for a modern anime. I think it was made in like 2008 or something. It's really great film. Definitely, if you're going to watch this one, like, watch it in the highest quality that you can get it, because it's definitely worth the payoff. There's so many beautiful, just wacky, crazy fucking shots, all these weird dream sequences where people start morphing into different figures and, you know, reality just bends. And talking about like Inception as well, like, anime is like such a better format, or like animation is like such a better format to like pull that sort of stuff off. It really gets transcendental bits as well, and it's humorous. It's quite light, though. Definitely, you know, has its edge to it as well. And there's really not much cliche at all about that anime either. It really does its own thing. Satoshi Kon is another great mind. You know, like the last three films that we've gone through, these were all great artists behind them. Don't want to put like all the credit just towards the directors, but they really brought that together, and they've, you know, they're auteurs, if you will. They do what they do very well, and they have an iconic style and way of expressing themselves which isn't regurgitative, you know what I mean? And who better to sort of summarize that sort of ideal in anime than Miyazaki himself. I have Spirited Away here and Princess Mononoke, which yeah, are probably my two favourite of the lot, though actually I would say that my favourite Miyazaki film is Tales from Earthsea. It was based on a book by Ursula E. Guin, and the book I don't really rate too highly, but Miyazaki's film, absolutely amazing. Same with Nausicaa in the Valley of the Wind, though that's a lot more light-hearted, playful. Tales from Earthsea was absolutely awesome. The fucking paintings, the story, the score, the way everything flowed together, perfect film. Loved it. And Miyazaki does it all the time Whenever he brings out a new film, I'm always very surprised with it. I'm always waiting to see what happens, waiting to see what unfolds, and it's so creative. It's so like sort of. I could never make something like that. You know what I mean? I find them spirited away as well. Like the first time I watched that, it was really like, what the fuck is going on? And it was, yeah, it was amazing. It was a wonderful adventure. Just like constantly things changing, things happening. So interesting, and it's such amount of heart that he puts into his films. You know what I mean? You can just tell, like, yeah, this isn't cash cow. This is a fucking artist, and that's why he won Oscars as well. He fucking deserves it, man. Really great films. I don't like all of Miyazaki's films. Some of them are just not my kind of taste. But generally, yeah, great. Same with Studio Ghibli as well. Many good films come out of them. So, got a bit of a lighter one here, which is Rin, Daughters of Mnemosyne. And this anime is, you know, almost like a guilty pleasure of mine. This is probably the one out of the lot where, you know, it's like, if make a rant about how much I hate modern anime, and then I'm like, oh, look at Rin. It seems a bit like hypocritical in ways, because there are so many dumb anime things in it. But this is one of those animes where it's just gory, horrific, sexy, just violent, bombastic, crazy shit going on, conspiracy theories. Like, one of the best animes to just roll a fucking joint and just get like right into this one. It's about a detective who can never die. She's like immortal. Her body always regenerates, even if you sort of cut her up into pieces and stuff like that. So she's almost like a sort of superhero, but it's got a very dark sort of tinge to it. The twist to it is that you know, she's been immortal for hundreds of years, and she's trying to protect her identity and stop herself from being known. But she's also always on the lookout for clues and cases that she can solve and try and. Well, I won't spoil too much of it, but there is a story behind like the immortals that are on the planet, and she's got her sidekick Mimi, who's like hundreds of years old, but she's stuck in like a 12-year-old girl's body. And they meet up with a clone. They find this guy who doesn't remember who he is. He turns out to be a clone, and they team up with him. The episodes are about 45 minutes long each, and what's really interesting and cool about the show is all of the episodes like span between themselves, going from like the 70s, like 1970, to around like I think maybe 2040, and it's really fucking good for that as well. Like the sense of continuity between each episode is put together so well, even though each episode is like a standalone episode that maybe you won't see again. You won't see the timeline again. Like the next episode will be in 5 years or something like that. It still manages to bridge those two gaps. Like there's something happening on the bigger scale, and then there's so many things happening on the smaller scale. So like from a writing perspective, I just thought it was really great, like how they managed to piece the show together. But it's you know, I love the X-Files, like Twilight Zone, all that sort of thing, and this one was just like that, plus with just all this sort of wacky fucking anime goodness, you know what I mean? Like fucking massively breasted woman with a hydraulic knuckle duster fucking punching zombies' heads off, Like, that's the kind of shit that you see in this. And just the over the top, like, violence, the torture, like, the over the top, like, raunchiness. It was just sort of like um, that old school, like, Quentin Tarantino factor. So, no, it's not, like, one of the best animes ever made, but it's certainly one of my favorite. Fucking love that anime. I've also got here Texhnolyze. It's a very underlooked hidden gem in my opinion. I don't even know where the hell I got this. Like, I really don't. I think it's fake or something, to be honest. Something just doesn't seem right with the backing. But yeah, I can't recall like buying this one actually. But the first time I watched it, I was very entranced. It's much like Ghost in the Shell or something like that, except that it's much more on the human level instead of like big politics, big companies and big characters like playing out in intelligence agencies and all this stuff. This was about people who were living on the bottom of society, and that was like really refreshing to see in an anime as well, because I don't really feel like you get that in animes at all. But there's a lot of like deep pain in this anime. It's very dark, and like the first two episodes hardly even have any dialogue at all. They don't have any important dialogue. It's just like ambient dialogue. But the like the music, the art, everything that is presented to you, especially at the start, it's almost like this dream, and it's brilliant to see how an art like this, like a medium like this, or a series like this can express so much with so little words, because you could be someone from anywhere in the fucking world and you could identify with what the character's going through just from the music, just from what's being shown to you. And it's not just like in a simple way either, it's like in a complex way, like a reflective way. It starts off like very psychological, then like as you go along through it, it gets more about like the economics, sort of about like how people. Sorry, my phone cut out there, but amidst the need for resources, what will people do to survive? Who will they be afterwards? And what are human beings worth? What is their value? What is the value of will when people can replace their bodies and their limbs and perhaps even their minds with programs that could outperform them? It's very good anime, and I highly recommend this one because it's also made by Project IG, I believe so. Anyway, like I said, this case is a bit strange. Not sure where the hell I got this thing from, but they also made Serial Experiments Lane. Great anime. I'll put a link in the description, a clip from it, but that goes into so much different things. It's basically like a future, or it's like a alternate sort of reality where people can have the ability to hook into the internet like through their minds, and all about how that ends up warping how people perceive reality as well. It's extremely relevant as well. Also, Ergo Proxy was made by the studio, and they're all very great animes that you should definitely watch. I'd probably say Serial Experiments Lane is the best of the lot. I don't think that was Project IG in full, but I think that they had a lot of the same people that worked on that. Um, Serial Experiments Lane goes into so much fucking freaky shit as well. It's very fourth wall breaking, and the way that that anime is structured as well, it very much changes your mind on the conventions, like your expectations of how a show should go. Really just like turns them on their head. Even though it's like very like low budget anime, it still managed to do so fucking much with it. And I'd probably say like Serial Experiments Lane is very close behind like sort of Ghost in the Shell 2. It's very well deserved like cult following and recognition. Not everyone's going to get into it, not everyone's going to like it. Some people will be like pushed away or jarred by the sort of numbingness of it. But there is that sort of unique, original storytelling that's also trying to symbolize like some sort of greater meaning, some sort of moral, and that anime does it very well. I think like Texhnolyze and Ergo Proxy, which is another sort of sci-fi dystopian thriller, they do things a little more subtly, whilst Serial Experiments Lane, whilst it does begin quite quiet and grey, it eventually develops into being quite sensational and sort of really, you know, overwhelms you with information at points. I know like most of the animes that I've talked about so far have been sci-fis, because I am like really into sci-fi, but honestly when I was trying to think up like, you know, what's my favorite fantasy anime, I don't really think I have. Well, I have a favorite, but I don't really think that there's many good fantasy animes, honestly. At least not ones that I've seen. Pretty much all the good animes that I watch are sci-fis, or, you know, things like Spirited Away, like adventure sort of things. But I find it very hard to find like a good, like, I'm not talking like something that's alright, I'm talking something that's like on par with something like Akira. There's not really anything there in terms of fantasy. Though I do have Berserk here, and by the way, I have volumes 1 to 11 of the first publishing in English of Berserk manga for sale if you're interested, and they're all in mint condition. And you know, I really like Berserk, but I think it's heavily overrated. I don't really think that like there's so many things that I could criticize Berserk for, and it's the same with the anime. I mean, I have the utmost respect for Kentaro Miura. Definitely is, you know, a great director, like a great writer, and he's got a lot of vision. He's got amazing drawing talents. I think he lacks a bit on the writing talents. There's so many parts of Berserk that just like meander off and stuff like that. Though it is like a great anime, it's an even better manga. So that's probably my favorite though. Apart from that, I don't really know any good like fantasy anime except stuff like Princess Mononoke and stuff like that, if that counts. Tales from Earthsea. I do have Afro Samurai here as well, which is just a really fun, like stupid, really groovy sort of violent, and it has that sort of Quentin Tarantino vibe and stuff again. But you know, it's not Kino. It's not like as good as it can be, but they don't always need to be. I do have you know, more anime obviously that I've watched, and you know, I've read a few mangas. I don't really like comic books anymore. Don't really like manga anymore, so I haven't bought or read any for many years. Though I used to dabble in a lot of that stuff, and then I just got kind of bored because I couldn't really find anything that was like on par with the stuff that I liked. And I waited a long time for that sort of thing as well, like looking about, giving a lot of shows like a good chance, but just like not really finding myself that interested. So that's probably it for tonight. It's my top 10 or whatever, how many it was. Hope you enjoyed. And yeah, let me know what you think. If you have any good fantasy animes to recommend, then let me know and maybe I'll watch them. If there's any ones that you're wondering if I've seen and maybe that's why it's not on the list or anything like that, and yeah, just let me know in the comments. But I'm gonna leave it there for tonight, guys, and I hope you have a good one. Take it easy. Cheers now. Just before I go, there's one more that half counts because half of it's an anime, but it's also Western produced, and that's the Animatrix. Absolutely amazing series. I have no idea why the fuck they didn't make season 2. They could have made 10 seasons out of this thing. They could have just gone all ways with this thing. An anime based in the Matrix universe. What the hell happened to that? It was amazing. The art styles are all original, even though so much of it is technically anime from being Japanese made. It doesn't feel regurgitated, doesn't feel like they've copied anything. They've just gone out and it's more just animation instead of falling even into the genre or the cliches of the art styles in anime. It's just going it's just doing its own thing. And if you like The Matrix, you have to see this one. Especially like all the people who don't think that the storyline is great, and like the last two Matrix films, like The Matrix Reloaded and Revolutions. I'm not talking about the new one. I haven't seen that. You should definitely watch this because it basically gives you the plot and all the background and the lore for the world and how the machines gained consciousness and all that sort of thing, and why the humans are like imprisoned, all the history of the Earth before it got destroyed. Plus there's just some like really mind-opening episodes where it really opens up how your mind can change reality in the Matrix and how people might cause bugs or glitches just from being certain ways. And it overall, it really like complements this sort of Twilight Zone-esque, you're stuck in the Matrix, like anything could happen. Fucking loved it. And like I said, no idea why the hell they didn't make more of these, because it was great. But anyway, guys, that's definitely it now. Cheers now.